I think they were of Michael with boys doing inappropriate things. I think they were probably sex tapes.
Neverland, a place straight out of a fairy tale, or so it seemed. Behind the sprawling gates of this fantasy land lay secrets that fueled endless whispers and jaw-dropping rumors.
He told me if they ever found out what we were doing, he and I would go to jail for the rest of our lives.
For years, it was Michael Jackson's fortress, a world he built to escape reality. But was it just an extravagant dreamscape or something much darker?
Yeah, I got suspicious. And then I would find underwears also in his bed. They were like crunchy, hard, with yellow stains all over them.
Hidden rooms, bizarre artifacts, and a lifestyle so surreal it felt almost otherworldly. What was really happening inside those walls? And what was Michael so desperate to keep locked away from the rest of the world? The man behind the legend. Michael Jackson's story begins in a small house in Gary, Indiana, a town that was far from glamorous, but bursting with potential for one special boy. Born on August 29, 1958, Michael was the 8th of 10 children in a family where music wasn't just entertainment, it was a way of life. Living in a cramped 2-bedroom house, the Jackson family faced the challenges of poverty with dreams that one day their talent might lead them to something greater. From the start, Michael's musical journey was shaped by his parents. His mother, Catherine, introduced her children to gospel music, filling the home with the soulful sounds of artists like Mahalia Jackson and Sam Cooke. On the other hand, Joseph Jackson, Michael's father, was a stern and ambitious man who saw music as a way to escape their struggles. Joseph pushed his children to form a band, believing their talent could be their ticket out of Gary. It was more than a dream, it was his mission. Can you imagine being only 5 years old and already the center of attention for something bigger than yourself? That was Michael's reality. Even as a child, his talent was undeniable. He had a voice that could stop people in their tracks and a charisma that made him unforgettable. When he joined his older brothers in the family band that would later become the Jackson 5, it was clear that he wasn't just another member, he was the star. The Jackson 5 began performing at local talent shows and small venues, quickly gaining attention for their high-energy performances. By 1968, their hard work paid off when Motown Records signed them. With Michael as the lead singer, the group released their first big hit, I Want You Back. It was an instant success followed by chart-topping singles like ABC and I'll Be There. Michael, still just a preteen, became a national sensation, but life in the spotlight came at a cost. Michael later revealed the darker side of his childhood, describing his father's relentless drive for perfection. Joseph wasn't just strict, he was often abusive, using fear and punishment to push his children to excel. Rehearsals were grueling, with long hours and little room for error. Mistakes were met with harsh words, and sometimes worse.
I wanted to play sometimes, and I couldn't, you know.
Why couldn't?
I had to go to the studio.
When you would be practicing, you were very heavily disciplined by your father. What was that like?
Well, I didn't have it that hard because he used me as the example. It was like, do it like Michael, you know, and he practiced us with a belt in his hand. And if you miss a step, expect to be,
Just let me go back. You just said that you would practice the dance steps and your father would be holding a belt in his hand. Is that what you just said?
Yes. And he would tear you up if you missed. And so we, not only were we practicing, we were nervous rehearsing because he sat in a chair and he had this bell in his hand. And if you didn't do it the right way, he would tear you up, really get you. And I got it a lot of times, but I think my brother Marlon got it the most because he had a hard time at first. And he tried so hard. And it was always, do it like Michael, you know, but the others were very nervous, and I was nervous too, you know, because he was tough.
How often would he beat you?
Too much.
Would he only use a belt?
Why do you do this to me? No, more than a belt.
What else would he use to hit you with?
Iron cords, whatever's around. Throw you up against the wall hard as he could. See, it's one thing to...
But you were only a child.
I know.
You were a baby.
I know. It's one thing to discipline.
And you were producing successful records.
I know. He would lose his temper. I just remember hearing my mother scream, "Joe, you're gonna kill him, you're gonna kill him, stop it, you're gonna kill him," you know, and I was so fast, you know, he couldn't catch me half the time, but when he would catch me, oh my God, it was bad. It was really bad.
What happens when the person shaping your dreams also becomes your greatest source of fear? For Michael, this was an everyday reality. Joseph's demands left little time for the joys of childhood. While other kids played outside or went to birthday parties, Michael was on stage or in the studio, performing with precision that belied his age. The spotlight may have brought him fame, but it also cast a shadow over his early years. By the late 1970s, Michael was ready to break away from the Jackson 5 and establish himself as a solo artist. His first major solo album, Off the Wall, released in 1979, showcased a more mature sound that fused pop, funk, and R&B. Songs like Don't Stop Till You Get Enough and Rock With You became instant classics, proving that Michael had the talent and vision to succeed on his own. But Off the Wall was just the beginning. In 1982, Michael released Thriller, an album that didn't just change his career, it changed the music industry. With hits like Billie Jean, Beat It, and the iconic title track, Thriller became the best-selling album of all time, selling over 70 million copies worldwide. It wasn't just the music that made Thriller legendary. It was the way Michael reinvented the music video. The Thriller video, with its cinematic storytelling and unforgettable dance moves, set a new standard for visual artistry in music. As Michael's fame skyrocketed, so did the pressure. The same relentless work ethic instilled by his father drove him to perfection, but it also took a toll on his mental health. Michael often spoke about feeling isolated and lonely, even as millions adored him. Fame created a bubble around him, making it difficult to trust people or lead a normal life. Have you ever felt like the world loved what you could do, but didn't really see who you were? That's how Michael described his life in the spotlight. Behind the glitz and glamour, he wrestled with insecurities that stemmed from his childhood. His father's harsh words about his appearance left lasting scars. And as he grew older, Michael became increasingly focused on altering how he looked. His changing appearance became a subject of endless speculation. But for Michael, it was about trying to find control over his life in ways he couldn't as a child. Despite his personal struggles, Michael never stopped innovating. He broke racial barriers, bringing people of all backgrounds together through his music. His performances, whether on stage or in music videos, weren't just entertaining, they were transformative. From the iconic moonwalk to his groundbreaking Super Bowl halftime show, Michael's artistry set a standard that remains unmatched. As his career continued, the scrutiny intensified. Michael's every move was watched, analyzed, and sometimes misunderstood. But even under the weight of public pressure, he kept pushing boundaries. Albums like Bad, Dangerous, and History showed that he wasn't just a one-time phenomenon. He was a lasting force in music and culture. Michael Jackson's journey from a small house in Gary, Indiana, to the global stage is a story of talent, resilience, and sacrifice. He gave the world music and magic that will be remembered for generations. But his story also serves as a reminder of the personal cost of greatness. Behind the dazzling performances and record-breaking albums was a man who never stopped striving to be better, even as he battled his own demons. His life, both triumphant and tragic, continues to inspire millions around the world. Michael wasn't just a pop star, he was a cultural icon, a symbol of what's possible when talent meets hard work. And while his story is filled with both incredible highs and painful lows, it's one that will forever be a part of history. Following his meteoric rise to fame, Michael Jackson's success brought unimaginable wealth, and with it came a string of extravagant purchases. He owned luxury cars like Rolls-Royces and Ferraris, adorned himself with custom-designed outfits, and even bought the iconic Neverland Ranch. It was a sprawling estate filled with amusement park rides, animals, and everything a child could dream of. Michael Jackson's dream world. Michael Jackson's Neverland Ranch was more than just a home. It was a world built straight out of his imagination, sprawling across nearly 3,000 acres in Los Olivos, California. This estate wasn't just big, it was a spectacle. Michael bought it in the late 80s, transforming what was once a peaceful countryside property into a dazzling wonderland that blurred the lines between reality and fantasy. Every corner of Neverland reflected his love for storytelling, magic, and his dream of escaping the pressures of fame. But here's the thing. Neverland wasn't just for Michael. It was his stage, his retreat, and sometimes his fortress. The Tudor-style main house was massive, with over 20 rooms, including a grand master suite, music studio, and a private theater. The theater itself was something special, a cozy yet extravagant space where Jackson could watch his favorite movies with a touch of old Hollywood charm. It even had a snack bar, so it wasn't just watching a movie, it was an experience. The magic didn't stop there. Michael turned the grounds into a fantasy land. There was a Ferris wheel, a carousel with custom-made animal figures, and a roller coaster, to name just a few of the rides that made Neverland feel like a private amusement park. Imagine walking through those gates and finding not just a mansion, but an entire playground for the soul. There was even a zoo complete with giraffes, elephants, and of course, Bubbles, his beloved chimpanzee. The property wasn't just about fun, it was designed to be a refuge, a place where the child in him could run free without judgment. And the landscaping? It was a masterpiece in itself. Picture this, sculpted gardens with rose bushes, fountains that seemed to sing, and a 4-acre lake that sparkled under the California sun. Cherry blossoms lined winding paths that led to secret alcoves and statues, each piece adding to the surreal beauty of the estate. The train station was one of the most iconic features, with a floral clock inspired by Disneyland. From there, a vintage steam train would take you on a scenic ride around the property, as if you were traveling through Michael's dream world. But as magical as it was, Neverland was also shrouded in mystery. Over time, the whimsical charm was overshadowed by the controversies that surrounded Jackson in the early 2000s. The ranch became a symbol of both his larger-than-life persona and the shadows that followed him. By the time it was sold in 2020, the rides were gone, and the estate had lost much of its sparkle. Billionaire Ron Burkle purchased it for $22 million, a fraction of its original value, but vowed to honor its legacy. Even today, Neverland isn't just remembered as a place, it's remembered as a piece of Michael Jackson's soul. It reflected his imagination, his contradictions, and the deep yearning to create a world of his own. What was it like to experience the magic of Neverland at its peak? That question, like the man himself, keeps the legacy alive. But along with the undeniable magic and legacy of Neverland, there are darker stories, rumors, and claims that suggest a side of Michael Jackson no one ever expected. So what was really going on behind the walls of this once enchanted estate? What was Michael trying to hide? The cleaning lady. Adrienne McManus was just one of many employees at Michael Jackson's Neverland Ranch, but her time working there would become much more than a simple maid job. As she witnessed the pop star's eccentricities and the unusual atmosphere at the estate, McManus found herself at the center of a controversy that would unfold long after her departure. Adrienne was far from an ordinary maid, hired to work at Michael Jackson's infamous Neverland Ranch in the late 1980s. McManus found herself in a job that many people would have dreamed of, living and working at the home of one of the most famous pop stars in the world. But what was it really like behind the gates of Neverland? As a maid, McManus was responsible for keeping the sprawling estate in top shape, which was no small task. The ranch had a reputation for being a magical, almost otherworldly place. But beyond the glamour and grandeur, McManus would later describe an environment that was far more complex and at times unsettling. Imagine being in a home where the lines between work and personal life constantly blurred, and where you were expected to cater not just to Jackson's needs, but to his eccentricities. During her time at Neverland, McManus worked long hours cleaning various rooms of the mansion, including the ones where Jackson would entertain his guests, often children. But as much as the estate seemed like a fun and whimsical place, McManus began to notice strange behaviors that piqued her curiosity. She witnessed Jackson's unusual relationship with the boys who visited, but like many at the time, she didn't quite understand the implications of what she was seeing.
He was a manipulator, and I feel that anybody that came in contact with him, he destroyed them. They've been destroyed. I noticed that there were a lot of little boys. That's all that would hang around there. You wouldn't see like little girls, and I knew the little boys were there. When they would arrive, they would put their clothes in a suitcase in his room. I started realizing, thinking, wondering, when he was taking baths with them, they were sleeping in his bed.
But there's sleeping and there's sleeping.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're talking about the worst kind of sleeping with children.
Yes. I know the truth. I was there. And when I would go in the next day, there were little boys' underwears either on the floor with Michael's, or they were in the jacuzzi.
So you were suspicious as soon as you saw that?
Yeah, I got suspicious. And then I would find underwears also in his bed. I did find underwears that were men's briefs in the walk-in closet, and they were, I don't like to say this, they were like crunchy, hard, with yellow stains all over them. I didn't know who they belonged to.
But what did she really know about the hidden side of Neverland? It wasn't until McManus was fired from her position in the mid-1990s that she started to speak out about what she had experienced. After leaving, she became one of the key figures in the public debate about Jackson's relationships with children. She claimed that she had been threatened to keep quiet about what she saw, and that her silence was bought with fear. Could these fears have been justified, considering the high-profile nature of her employer? The maid's tenure at Neverland made her a central figure in the ongoing discussions about Michael Jackson's private life. While McManus didn't directly accuse Jackson of any wrongdoing, she described a peculiar atmosphere on the ranch that became impossible to ignore. The fact that young boys were regularly invited to stay at Neverland, sometimes in Jackson's private rooms, raised eyebrows even back then. So what really went on behind those walls? In the years that followed, McManus's voice would become an important part of the narrative surrounding Jackson, especially as the allegations against him grew louder. Her experience at Neverland was both ordinary and extraordinary, revealing a side of Jackson's life that many were either too afraid or unwilling to talk about. While she remained a controversial figure, her testimony sometimes questioned by skeptics, her account remains an integral piece in understanding the complexities of Michael Jackson's time at Neverland. Adrienne McManus's wild claims. Adrienne McManus worked as a maid at Michael Jackson's Neverland Ranch, and her time there was far from ordinary. Hired in the early 1990s, just before Jackson was first accused of child molestation, McManus found herself in the middle of a world that was as bizarre as it was dark. Over the years, she came forward with a series of shocking claims about what she witnessed behind the walls of Neverland, a place that many considered to be the ultimate escape from reality. But for some, it held deeply disturbing secrets. So what did she see that made her speak out? According to McManus, her duties as a maid gave her access to areas of Neverland that few outsiders would ever see. She described walking into Jackson's bedroom multiple times and finding young boys lying on his bed, an image that was not only odd, but, in McManus's words, wrong. She also recalled disturbing details like finding young boys' underwear floating in the jacuzzi in Jackson's bedroom, adding another layer to the unease she felt working at the ranch. For McManus, these weren't just strange moments. They were red flags. But McManus's claims went deeper. She later revealed that Jackson himself had told her, "Whatever happens in Neverland stays in Neverland." This cryptic statement seemed to reinforce the idea that the eccentric and controversial star was hiding something behind closed doors. McManus also reported that she frequently saw Jackson interacting with the children in ways that seemed overly affectionate, which only fueled her suspicions that there was something inappropriate happening. As her time at Neverland went on, McManus noticed more than just unusual behavior. She became alarmed by Jackson's increasing isolation and the strange atmosphere that seemed to permeate the estate. Was there more going on behind the scenes than anyone realized? McManus claimed that she was threatened by another employee who warned her against talking about what she had witnessed. The threat was chilling. If she ever went public with her story, she was told, they could hire a hitman to silence her. They'll never find your body, the person allegedly told her. This terrifying moment made McManus feel trapped in a world she didn't fully understand. Despite the threats, McManus did eventually speak out, offering her testimony in Jackson's 2005 child molestation trial. She claimed she had witnessed Jackson fondling Macaulay Culkin, the famous child star, though Culkin vehemently denied the allegations. McManus also pointed to other strange behavior she had witnessed, such as finding jars of Vaseline in various rooms of the house. Though these claims have been contested by Jackson's camp, they still raised questions about the nature of his relationships with the children who spent time at Neverland. The maid also shared unsettling details about Jackson's personal life. McManus claimed that she witnessed Jackson overdose twice while working at Neverland. On one occasion, she found him unresponsive and assumed he was dead. His eyes were wide open and his body was limp. However, when McManus called out to him, Jackson suddenly woke up, broke down in tears, and began to cry uncontrollably. This was just one of many bizarre and troubling incidents McManus recalled, and it left her feeling both disturbed and worried about Jackson's health. Despite her deepening concerns, McManus continued to work for Jackson, even as she struggled with the fear that she was trapped in a situation she couldn't escape. But it wasn't just fear that kept her there. She also felt a deep sense of confusion about what was really going on behind the gates of Neverland. But why did she stay so long despite everything she saw? McManus later said that she didn't fully understand what was happening until after she left the ranch, looking back with a clearer perspective on the strange dynamics she had witnessed. After Jackson's death in 2009, McManus reflected on her experiences, admitting that, while she wasn't surprised by his passing, the memory of her time at Neverland still haunted her. The secrets of Neverland, it seemed, were far more disturbing than anyone could have guessed. McManus's claims added to the growing list of questions that surrounded Jackson's personal life, raising doubts about the innocence of his relationships with children. For many, Adrian McManus's claims painted a chilling portrait of Michael Jackson, one that contrasted sharply with his public image as the beloved king of pop. Whether her claims were entirely true or exaggerated, they became an essential part of the conversation surrounding Jackson's complicated legacy. Her willingness to speak out about the unsettling things she witnessed made her one of the key figures in the ongoing debate about what really happened behind the gates of Neverland. Following her claims, people started coming forward with stories that shook the entire world. Michael Jackson's alleged abuse accusations. Michael Jackson's name remains synonymous with pop culture, yet alongside his towering legacy, there are dark, painful stories that continue to cast a shadow over his career. Several individuals have publicly accused him of sexual abuse, each claim adding a layer of controversy to the enigmatic star's life. While Jackson's legal battles have been long and often contentious, these allegations are central to the ongoing debate about his legacy. One of the most shocking cases was that of Wade Robson, a dancer and choreographer who once had a close friendship with Jackson. But what made Robson's story so compelling? In the beginning, Robson seemed to defend Jackson. He testified in Jackson's favor during the 2005 trial, even claiming that nothing inappropriate had occurred during their time together. But years later, in 2013, Robson made a dramatic shift, filing a lawsuit in which he accused Jackson of sexually abusing him from the age of 7. Robson revealed that the abuse occurred during the late 1980s and early 1990s, with Jackson allegedly manipulating him into believing their relationship was special and that what was happening was normal. This revelation was not just a personal bombshell, it was the start of an intense legal battle and a key part of the Leaving Neverland documentary, where Robson's story came into the public eye in 2019. But did Robson's shift from defender to accuser open a floodgate of other claims? James Safechuck, another central figure in Leaving Neverland, followed a similar path. Safechuck met Jackson when he was just 10 years old, and like Robson, he had initially denied any abuse. He even defended Jackson publicly during the early years. However, after years of emotional turmoil, Safechuck came forward in 2014, filing a lawsuit claiming that Jackson had sexually abused him repeatedly, often in the master bedroom at Neverland Ranch. His testimony was heartbreaking, describing how Jackson made him feel special while also subjecting him to years of manipulation and abuse. The details in Safechuck's testimony were deeply disturbing. Jackson allegedly took him on trips and molested him in various locations, and the abuse continued even as Safechuck grew older. But why did these men wait years to come forward? What was holding them back? Both Robson and Safechuck later explained that they had been manipulated into believing that the abuse was a sign of love, which led them to suppress the trauma for many years. They claimed that Jackson's charm, fame, and influence kept them in a twisted sense of loyalty. It wasn't until much later in their lives that they realized the full extent of what had happened to them. Of course, these stories were not the first allegations against Jackson. In 1993, Jordan Chandler, a 13-year-old boy, accused Jackson of sexual abuse. His story was sensationalized, and though Chandler's family eventually settled with Jackson out of court, the allegations were never fully resolved in a legal setting. Chandler's testimony was a significant moment in the public narrative about Jackson, but his family's decision to settle meant the truth of the claims was never publicly debated in a courtroom. In 2003, Jackson faced another series of allegations when Gavin Arvizo, a young boy who had spent time at Neverland, accused him of molestation. Arvizo's case went to trial in 2005, and although Jackson was acquitted of all charges, the details of his testimony and Arvizo's remained deeply troubling. Arvizo claimed Jackson used his fame to lure him and his family in before subjecting him to months of abuse. Despite the jury's verdict, Arvizo's testimony painted a picture of a man using his power to manipulate and harm children. After Jackson's death in 2009, the accusations didn't stop. Why did these allegations continue to resurface? The release of Leaving Neverland in 2019, which focused on the testimonies of Robson and Safechuck, reignited the conversation about Jackson's relationships with young boys. The documentary drew widespread attention, with some defending Jackson's innocence, while others saw it as undeniable proof of his guilt. The film not only brought Robson and Safechuck's claims back into the spotlight, but also sparked renewed debates over how society handles accusations of sexual abuse, particularly when they involve powerful celebrities. The legal and public battles surrounding Jackson's alleged abuse have left a permanent mark on his legacy. For many, the accusations cast a shadow over his musical genius, leaving them to grapple with a dark reality behind his public persona. Can a musical icon like Michael Jackson ever be separated from these serious allegations? His accusers, Robson, Safechuck, Chandler, and Arvizo, have each added their voices to the complicated and troubling narrative that continues to unfold, creating a story that is as tragic as it is controversial. The king of pop or a predator? The public's reaction to the allegations that Michael Jackson was a child predator was met with intense controversy, shock, and division. For years, Michael Jackson was seen as the beloved king of pop, admired worldwide for his musical genius, his charitable work, and his larger-than-life persona. However, the shocking claims of child abuse came to light, shaking the foundations of his image. When the first accusations surfaced in the early 1990s, following Jordy Chandler's allegations, many were skeptical. Michael Jackson had always portrayed himself as a childlike figure, associating with young boys and openly stating his belief that he was meant to be their protector. So when Chandler's allegations emerged, there was a great deal of disbelief among fans, with many dismissing the charges as a misunderstanding or a money grab. Jackson's defense, as always, centered on his deep affection for children, framing the accusations as nothing more than false claims fueled by financial motives. Despite this, the legal battles kept piling up. In 2005, Jackson found himself in a highly publicized trial after Gavin Arvizo, a boy who had spent time at Jackson's Neverland Ranch, accused him of molestation. The trial, broadcasted nationwide, created a media storm. While Jackson's supporters stood firm, the mounting evidence, including testimony from Arvizo and others, raised serious questions. Jackson was ultimately cleared of all charges, and some saw this as proof of his innocence. But for many, the damage had already been done. Was the verdict enough to silence the lingering doubts? The public remained divided, and over time, more accusers came forward. The documentary, Leaving Neverland, presented chilling details, further complicating Jackson's legacy. Robson, who had previously defended Jackson, described how he had been manipulated into silence, and the docuseries offered a deeply personal and harrowing view of how Jackson allegedly groomed him. Safechuck echoed similar stories of abuse, recalling the gifts, the private moments, and the psychological control Jackson exerted over them. The documentary caused an uproar, reigniting debates about Jackson's actions and reigniting the discussions about his reputation. Could a man who brought joy to so many really have committed these horrific acts? This was the question on everyone's mind as the public grappled with the new claims. The accusations were met with polarized reactions. Some believed the men's testimonies, while others, loyal to Jackson's memory, remained convinced of his innocence. The public's reaction also intersected with broader discussions about the nature of celebrity, power, and the tendency of fans to protect their idols at all costs. Many who had grown up with Jackson's music struggled to reconcile the man they admired with the monster described in the allegations. People who had attended his concerts, bought his albums, and supported his charity work found themselves questioning their own perceptions of him. Yet, despite the mounting evidence and the emotional testimonies of the victims, a section of the public remained steadfast in their defense of Jackson. Was he truly a victim of a malicious conspiracy, or had the truth been ignored for too long? The debate raged on, with Jackson's defenders pointing to the lack of a criminal conviction and asserting that his accusers were simply looking for money or revenge. For many, the claims left a lasting impact. Michael Jackson's name became synonymous with both unparalleled success and disturbing controversy. In the end, whether he was a misunderstood victim or a predator remains a topic of fierce debate. The public's reaction, divided between loyalty and disbelief, underscores how difficult it is to reconcile a beloved figure with accusations of such heinous behavior. The mystique of Michael Jackson's life. Michael Jackson, the king of pop, has been surrounded by rumors and controversies throughout his life. But while the accusations of child sexual abuse certainly made headlines, they're far from the only stories that clouded his public image. In fact, many of the rumors about Michael Jackson became so wild and bizarre, they often seemed more like fictional tales than real-life events. But these stories were part of what made Jackson both a legend and an enigma. From his ever-changing appearance to the strange relationships he had with celebrities, the world couldn't help but speculate. One of the first things people noticed about Michael Jackson was his dramatic transformation. In the early years of his career, Jackson was known for his unique look, his dark skin and distinctive features. But by the time Thriller came out in the early 1980s, fans began to notice something was different. His skin was getting lighter, and his nose seemed to be changing shape. Was he just aging, or was something more going on? The tabloids jumped at the chance to speculate, suggesting everything from skin-lightening treatments to Jackson going under the knife for a series of plastic surgeries. Jackson always maintained that his lighter skin was the result of vitiligo, a skin condition that causes loss of pigmentation. However, people weren't so sure. His narrow nose and more delicate features led many to believe that surgery was behind the transformation. But what about Jackson's odd behavior? Was it just the eccentricities of a superstar? Or was there something more at play? Michael's Neverland Ranch became one of the most infamous locations tied to him. Located in Santa Barbara, California, Neverland was no ordinary mansion. It was a sprawling estate complete with a zoo, an amusement park, and even a Ferris wheel. Did this place represent the innocence of childhood that Jackson longed to reclaim? Or was it something darker? Many wondered why a grown man would fill his home with toys and invite children over to sleep at his private amusement park. The answer was never clear, and the speculation only grew. Some believed it was a way for Jackson to relive his lost childhood, which by his own account had been filled with pressure and emotional pain. But others couldn't ignore the rumors about the kids who visited. Then there was Michael Jackson's relationships with other celebrities. Jackson's friendship with actress Elizabeth Taylor raised a lot of eyebrows. The two were inseparable for many years, and their bond became the subject of intense speculation. Were they just close friends, or was there more to it than that? While they always denied any romantic involvement, the public couldn't help but wonder if there was something deeper between them. Was Taylor one of the few people Jackson could rely on, or was their connection something else entirely? Another widely discussed relationship was his marriage to Lisa Marie Presley. The daughter of Elvis Presley, Lisa Marie was one of the most famous women in the world when she married Jackson in 1994. The media went wild, dubbing them the king and queen of pop. But their marriage was far from smooth. Was their whirlwind marriage just a publicity stunt? It was reported that the marriage was already on the rocks by the time it ended in 1996, with Presley herself later suggesting that it had been more about publicity than true love. Their relationship became one of the most talked about celebrity marriages of all time, and the rumors surrounding it still swirl to this day. Then there was Michael's close friendship with child actor Macaulay Culkin. Culkin, best known for his role in Home Alone, was a frequent guest at Neverland Ranch, and the two were often seen together. The tabloid press had a field day, suggesting that Jackson's relationship with Culkin was something far more inappropriate. Were these just rumors, or was there more going on behind the scenes? Culkin consistently denied any wrongdoing and insisted their relationship was purely platonic. But the public didn't seem satisfied with that answer, and the idea of an adult superstar spending so much time with a child star raised plenty of eyebrows. And of course, let's not forget Michael's bizarre public behavior, which seemed to change with every appearance. From wearing surgical masks to showing up with his pet chimpanzee Bubbles, Jackson's life became a non-stop spectacle. He was frequently seen wearing strange outfits, and his fondness for animals like elephants, giraffes, and snakes only added to his eccentric image. Was this just the behavior of a man who had lost touch with reality, or was there something deeper at play? His actions seemed designed to shock and confuse, and as his fame grew, so did the rumors. Many believed Jackson was either eccentric or deeply troubled, but no one could truly say for sure. Then, of course, came the rumors about Jackson's strange spiritual beliefs. Throughout his life, he seemed fascinated by the occult and supernatural, with reports suggesting he dabbled in mysticism and was drawn to strange spiritual practices. There were even rumors that he believed in UFOs and had an interest in witchcraft. What was Michael Jackson really into? It's hard to say. He was an enigmatic figure, and while he seemed to indulge in strange habits, no one could ever confirm just how far his interest went. Of course, all of these stories were further magnified by the relentless media scrutiny Jackson faced. In the days before the internet, the tabloids were the go-to source for celebrity gossip, and they were merciless when it came to Jackson. They were quick to jump on any new rumor or scandal, often blowing things out of proportion. Even after the criminal trial in the early 2000s, in which Jackson was acquitted of all charges, the rumors continued to swirl, damaging his reputation. So what do we make of all these rumors and controversies? Michael Jackson was a man of many contradictions. He was a groundbreaking artist who revolutionized music and dance, but his personal life was a constant source of mystery. His changing appearance, strange behavior, and rumored relationships all created a narrative that sometimes seemed more like fiction than reality. And while the accusations against him may be the most infamous part of his legacy, they certainly aren't the only thing that shaped his complicated image. Jackson's story is a fascinating one, filled with highs and lows, triumphs and scandals. While the rumors and controversies that followed him were often wild and hard to believe, they added to the mystique that made him one of the most talked about celebrities in history. His life may have been filled with mystery, but his music and influence will live on, reminding the world of the artist behind the enigma. So what do you think? Does Michael Jackson's legacy as the king of pop still hold up after all these allegations, or has it been irreparably damaged? Where do you stand on the accusations made by those who've come forward? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more interesting videos. Thanks for watching.